Sequels! Everyone's got an opinion on them, and I think we can all agree that the video game and movie industries have leaned on them a little bit too hard lately.
Pumping out sequels nobody asked for, sequels that completely misunderstand what made the first one great, or dragging a franchise's corpse around long after the milk's gone sour.
Why not take a financial risk and, I don't know, come up with an original idea for once?
Why should you care about corporate entertainment products failing to replicate prior success when the original still exists?
Well, Zed, it's because people like to be entertained, and people get mad when they feel like they just paid for something that also wastes their time. It's not that complicated.
I see. Humans dislike monetary waste, alongside their limited lifespan also being wasted.
Really cracking the code there with that revelation, aren't you, Zed?
But this isn't about terrible sequels. I'm here to talk about the best ones.
So for this list, I've set some rules. These are direct sequels. If it has a 2 in the title, it qualifies.
Because for every Joker 2 that you wish never happened, you've got your Aliens, your Terminator 2, or Empire Strikes Back, sequels that don't just match the original, but eclipse them.
Otherwise, this just turns into another best game in a franchise, and that's not what we're doing here.
And every title here, in some shape or form, left a mark on the industry. These aren't just good games, they're sequels that left an impact.
So with all that out of the way, let's get started.
I can hardly wait for the disappointment.
Mass Effect 2. We're going to be starting off strong with this one. Now, I might be a little biased here, but I don't think you'll find many people arguing that Mass Effect 2 is one of the greatest sequels of all time. The first game laid the foundation with incredible world building and great characters, creating a universe that felt massive and believable. But let's be honest, the controls were clunky, the inventory management was a chore, and the Mako handled like a refrigerator on wheels. The refined gameplay loop simplified item management while expanding the customization and building a universe you'd actually want to live in made for a sequel that felt equal parts blockbuster action and space opera tragedy. With unforgettable companions and genuinely tough choices, Mass Effect 2 didn't just improve the original, it elevated the entire franchise. What could have just been a forgotten one-off sci-fi RPG instead became one of the most beloved trilogies in gaming.
Would you please sign my petition? Hi there, would you like to sign my petition? Sign this petition or I'll follow you home and kill your dog.
Postal 2. Without a doubt, the most controversial and infamous game on this list, the first Postal was a much simpler top-down shooter, where the objective was to kill as many innocent bystanders as possible, with bits and pieces of the Postal dude's lore dropped between levels in unsurprisingly disturbing journal entries. The developer, running with scissors, decided to go for a much more absurd tone in the sequel, where they brought the gameplay to the first-person perspective in a much more open-ended world environment, which resulted in one of the most hilarious examples of people exerting their free will by actually making this game. It ended up being banned in at least 5 countries, and distribution and ownership of the game landed you in prison for up to 10 years and a $50,000 fine if you were caught with it in New Zealand.
I typically don't care for the suffering of humans, but that sounds like an excessive punishment for such a meager crime.
I mean, really, what other game lets you tase, decapitate, blow up, throw machetes like boomerangs, and conduct biological warfare on random bystanders, pissing in people's faces until they puke, all while high off cat food that gives you bullet time? Still too tame? Well, how about setting a marching band on fire, shoving the barrel of a gun up a cat's butt and using the poor thing as a silencer while robbing a bank, wiping out the Taliban, impersonating a police officer, getting kidnapped by rednecks and being made their gimp before escaping, jumping out his second-story window with your dick in your hand, and blowing up the town in an atomic hellfire all in the same week while smoking crack. Oh, I'm sorry, I mean health pipe.
This can't be good for me, but I feel great.
Suffice to say, playing this game will put you on a government watch list somewhere.
On second thought, they were not harsh enough.
So that's what that smells like.
Earthbound. And no, I'm not kidding. While we know it as Earthbound here in the West, in Japan it goes by Mother 2, both as a sequel and, in some way, a reimagining of the original. When it launched in the US for the Super Nintendo, it bombed terribly, thanks to a questionable marketing strategy built around America's obsession with gross-out culture in the 90s, which completely misrepresented a game that was understandably difficult to market. So it slipped into obscurity for years, but over time, people started to realize what it really was: a surreal, often absurd RPG set in a grounded suburban parody of America, hiding a surprisingly heartfelt story underneath all of its weirdness. That slow burn turned it into what is now considered the cult classic to end all cult classics, and for many, not just one of the greatest RPGs ever made, but the greatest. And also known for being one of the most ridiculously expensive games to ever own a physical copy of.
Bet you can't stick it.
You're on.
Halo 2. For those who have watched my previous videos, it should be no surprise to find Halo 2 on this list, given my love for the franchise. What Halo Combat Evolved did to legitimize FPS games on console back in 2001, it did so again with legitimizing online multiplayer for consoles in 2004. Multiplayer FPS gaming has already existed almost exclusively on the PC for years already, with some niche exceptions like the port of Quake 3 on the Sega Dreamcast with a landline connection. But it was Halo 2, along with Microsoft's new Xbox Live Internet service, to connect players online that brought gamers together from across the globe from their living rooms on such a large scale for the first time. And it turned online FPS multiplayer from an experiment and financial risk into what has now become the main way gamers play together when they're not in the same room, and one of the core reasons gaming has become such a financial juggernaut in entertainment. It was the catalyst that turned gaming for many people from a solitary activity with moments of couch multiplayer with your friends all in the same room for moments of time to when staying home on a Friday night didn't mean you were alone, you were in matchmaking, making friends, and trash talking.
I bet you stop having sex with your own face and shut the f up.
And speaking of trash talking,
pussy. Right. Yum, 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 yum. I eat dick all day. Yum, 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 yum. I eat dick. You want to fight dick all day? Dick? Pretty good. What a f***ing homo. You eat dick. You said he eats dick.
Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. If Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare heralded the advent of the modern military craze after FPS gaming's long obsession with World War II throughout the early 2000s, then Modern Warfare 2 put the gas pedal firmly onto the floor while cranking the volume all the way up to 11. Modern Warfare 2 was the moment that Call of Duty officially took the multiplayer king crown from Halo that had held onto that title up until that point and became the reigning champ of multiplayer shooters for over a decade since. With a single-player campaign that pushed boundaries and an addicting multiplayer loop with gameplay as unhinged as the pre- and post-game lobbies, it was a phenomenon. Those matchmaking lobbies were the stuff of legends, completely unfiltered. You either learned to throw shade back, or you washed out and cried like a bitch who got their feelings hurt because somebody called you the N-word or a bundle of sticks. Hell, I myself lost track how many times a 12-year-old told me they banged my mom the previous night. Who knew my mother was so popular with the youth?
Who could that be? Hello?
Sweetheart, when are you planning on stopping by today to help your mother with her skincare routine?
Speak of the devil.
Mother, I've already told you I'm going to be there later this evening when I'm done recording.
Oh, is that what you're doing right now? Well, don't let me stop you. Oh, and be a good dear and don't forget to bring a fresh sponge. The old one's starting to get moldy and I don't want it getting into my crevices.
Goodbye, Mother.
You're keeping this in.
Shut up!
Fallout 2. Fallout 2 is one of those games where anyone who's pushed past the initial learning curve, the obtuse menus, the punishing early difficulty, the sheer lack of hand-holding, walks away feeling like they just finished one of the greatest RPGs they've ever played. Meanwhile, everyone else takes one look at it and writes it off as a clunky relic from the late 90s.
Brother, what's that?
But what a lot of people miss is just how much of Fallout's DNA was truly cemented here. Many of the fan-favorite factions, the deeper world building, and the sharper tonal balance between bleak post-apocalyptic despair and biting satire was fully realized in Fallout 2.
What can the President of the United States of America do for you?
I came down because I heard there was chocolate chip ice cream.
It doesn't take itself too seriously, sometimes even breaking the fourth wall, yet it never undermines the weight of its setting. Fallout 1 laid the groundwork with its retro-futuristic atom punk premise. Fallout 2 is where the series' personality really locked in. This is where the tone, the humor, and the scope expanded into something that would define the franchise for decades. And this is my call to action for any Fallout fans watching this who haven't played the original 2 games. Give them a shot. Yes, the menus are dated. Yes, the combat feels slower and more methodical, but there are plenty of great resources and even greater quality of life mods out there to help you through the growing pains. And besides, you really should try to respect your elders. Seriously, give them a call sometime. They'd love to hear from you.
You mean like that call you just received?
I'm not speaking to you right now.
Enclave here. Why isn't your video feed working?
Street Fighter 2. If there was ever a sequel that didn't just improve on its predecessor, but completely defined an entire genre, there is no better example than Street Fighter 2. Released at the dawn of the 90s and following up on a 1986 original that felt more like a rough proof of concept than a fully realized game, Street Fighter 2 sharpened everything to a fine edge. It stole the spotlight in arcades everywhere, helped revive the arcade industry in the United States, and ushered in a full-blown fighting game boom through the decade. Every character had a distinct look and play style, no longer just palette swaps with slightly different moves. They all felt unique. The controls were tight and skill-based, so if you lost, it wasn't because the game was janky. It was because somebody was just better than you. Unless they were spamming low kicks like a total degenerate. Street Fighter 2 laid down the blueprint that countless other developers followed. Without it, you don't get Mortal Kombat, you don't get Tekken, you don't get King of Fighters, you don't get Killer Instinct, or the countless other fighting games that defined the 90s. And it also laid down the groundwork for what would eventually become the global fighting game community and events like EVO. Street Fighter 2's publisher, Capcom, essentially received a license to print money. The game saw multiple revisions, re-releases, and speedier, flashier versions across arcades and home consoles, to the point where it almost became absurd. And that's not even bringing up the toys, the Saturday morning cartoon,
Yes! Yes!
the anime, and the feature-length movie.
Of course!
And if this were actually a ranked list, Street Fighter 2 would be fighting for the #1 spot. Not just because it was a great game, but because it was a cultural detonation for its genre and for gaming as a whole. Super Smash Bros. Melee. If the original Smash Bros. On the Nintendo 64 was a fun party experiment, iconic Nintendo characters clashing on your friend's living room TV, then the sequel Melee was what happened when the experiment was rushed out the door to launch aside with the GameCube and accidentally became immortal. Developed in just under 2 years, Melee wasn't meticulously engineered to be a hyper-technical competitive fighter. In fact, many of the mechanics that define it today weren't intentional at all. Wave dashing, L canceling, dash dancing, shield popping, advanced movement techniques that exist largely because of the quirks in the engine and the physics system, side effects of a game built quickly under pressure. But instead of it breaking the game, the community mastered it. What was supposed to be a chaotic crossover party fighter game became one of the most mechanically demanding competitive games ever played, with a 20-plus year esports history sustained by grassroots tournaments, CRT televisions, and players who treat frame data like sacred scripture. But time moved on, Nintendo moved on, new entries sold better, the series evolved, but Melee never left. It survived not because of the developer demanded, but because the players refused to let it die. And that might be the most powerful kind of sequel impact there is. Pokémon Gen 2, Gold, Silver, and Crystal. Pokémon was already a global phenomenon in the late 90s. Red, blue, green, and yellow. The games exploded. The anime exploded. Trading cards, merch, playground politics, it was everywhere. But Gen 2 is where it stopped being a craze and became an empire. Gold, Silver, and Crystal didn't just repeat the formula, they expanded it in every direction. A real-time day and night cycle, breeding, held items, 2 new types, and these were systems that more or less became permanent fixtures for the series. Features that felt like natural evolutions of the world, and not just temporary mechanics built to headline the next marketing cycle and justifying the next game's existence. 100 new Pokemon, a full return trip to Kanto after you beat the Elite Four as a surprise epilogue, and then Red, the character you played in the first game, waiting for you at the top of Mount Silver as the game's final challenge, like the final exam for your childhood. If the first generation of Pokemon was lightning in a bottle, Gen 2 was Nintendo looking at the world and going, "Oh, you want to see us do it again?" And then doing it bigger and better. It was the moment Pokemon stopped being a flash-in-the-pan fad like so many other things from the 90s were and became the most profitable entertainment franchise on the planet, outpacing Star Wars, Marvel, DC, all of it.
If you've made it this far into the video, I just want to give you a big thanks, and please hit that like and subscribe button.
It means a lot, and it really helps the channel against the almighty algorithm.
Now, before we get to the final game on this list, I just need to address the elephant in the room.
There's a lot of other sequels with 2 in the title that could have easily made this list.
So here's a lightning round of honorable mentions. And yes, any one of these could have been swapped in for something on the main list. It just came down to choice.
And besides, top 10 sounds way better than top 20.
Some of you are probably already thinking of a game that I haven't even mentioned yet.
I'm not.
I wasn't talking to you.
Of course not. You've been talking to a camera all afternoon. Which is pretty sad, to be honest.
Oh, okay. Would it just make you feel any better if I just talked to you the entire time then?
No.
God of War 2. Bigger, louder, and arguably better than the original in every way. It took Kratos from the angry myth guy to a full-blown Greek tragedy wrecking ball and pushed the PS2 to its limits that it had no business reaching that late into its life cycle. Doom 2. While the original Doom changed the industry overnight, Doom 2 became the foundation for everything to come afterwards. Custom WADs, total conversions, and decades of community maps. If you've played an indie boomer shooter in recent years, you can probably trace its DNA in the code back to here. Diablo 2. Basically invented digital addiction. Loot grinding, build crafting, ladder sessions, Diablo 2 defined the action RPG loop for the next 2 decades. Gears of War 2. Took the cover shooter formula and cranked the scale to absurd levels. Bigger battles, darker tone, and multiplayer that dominated Xbox Live for its era. Resident Evil 2. Resident Evil 2 took the mansion horror of the first game and expanded it into something bigger, darker, and more ambitious. It was the moment cinematic survival horror went mainstream. Assassin's Creed 2. The moment the franchise finally figured itself out. A charismatic protagonist, refined mechanics, and a beautiful world of Renaissance Italy to explore that launched a juggernaut franchise with yearly releases, for better and worse. Dark Souls. The only game I'd break the rules for this list, a spiritual successor and semi-sequel to Demon's Souls that birthed an entire subgenre, stamina-based combat, cryptic storytelling, and the phrase "you died" becoming a cultural catchphrase. Mega Man 2. The formula perfected, tighter level design, iconic music, and the version of Mega Man most people still think of to this day. Sonic the Hedgehog 2. Faster, bigger, and introducing Tails, the sequel that cemented Sonic as Sega's 90s mascot king, before the dark times. System Shock 2. Deep RPG systems, environmental storytelling, and a certain AI named Shodan that influenced everything from BioShock to modern immersive sims. And now with that out of the way, let's get to the final entry on this list, and it really should be a surprise to no one. All of Valve's sequel games.
Error. Multiple entries detected in a single slot. Processing. Processing complete. You're cheating on this one.
Alright, fine, you're not wrong. But let's be honest here. Every one of these games that Valve has created belongs on this list. And I'll never hear the end of it if I only include just one.
So I'm waving the white flag on this one. They all belong on this list, but if I added them all, they'd take up like half the slots, so consider this a nice compromise. Basically, Valve has run the gambit on capitalizing on the number 2, and not only refining the gameplay for each of these games from their first entries, some of them being straight up unofficial mods that later became fully realized games, but they've all had a sizable impact on internet pop culture or innovated on a genre or gameplay formula well ahead of the curve for others to iterate on. Half-Life 2 with its strong narrative, normalizing environmental storytelling, and revolutionary physics as a part of the gameplay with its source engine. Team Fortress 2 with its iconic line of characters that might as well be immortal at this point, and laying the groundwork for what would later become the hero shooter format years before it became an oversaturated genre it's become currently. With a cosmetic item economy and marketplace that predated the microtransactions and short-lived NFT craze by a decade. And Source Filmmaker, which has given players and amateur animators an incredible tool for storytelling and other much less advertiser-friendly uses. And that's not even touching Portal 2's puzzle perfection and beloved dry humor, Left 4 Dead 2's addictive co-op design and brilliant AI that keeps the gameplay fresh, or Counter-Strike's stranglehold on competitive shooters. An entire video can be done on Valve's games and their greater influence on gaming and internet culture on its own, so consider this just scratching the surface and giving credit where credit is rightfully due. Now, excuse me while I wait for the next Steam sale that'll just continue to burn a hole in my pocket and add another game to the growing pile of shame of other games in my library that'll take me a lifetime for me to play through them all.
So that's my top 10 list of greatest video game sequels. What'd you think? If you feel like I missed something that should have been included, make sure to leave it in the comments below.
I think you were too pandering with your list.
Oh yeah? Well, maybe I should have included such masterpieces as Dragon Age 2, Overwatch 2, and The Last of Us Part 2, just to really complete the trifecta of garbage for engagement bait.
Perhaps you should have. Great engagement is one of humanity's few remaining reliable energy sources.
Please like and subscribe, it helps with my depression, but of course that's up to your discretion.